Hi, welcome to the Instructional Technology Resource Center's Wednesday webinar, using ISU Canvas assessments for success. If you're unfamiliar with the ITRC, we're available to help support your course development and use of educational technology. I'm going to turn it over to Mark. He's going to talk about the benefits of a well-structured assessment.
Thank you, Ellie. Okay, so when designing your assessments and designing them in Canvas, it's essential to consider key elements to ensure that they're effective and meaningful for your students. And so the first is to make sure that your assessments are aligned with the learning objectives. And this will ensure that what you're measuring truly reflects what the students need to learn. And next, well-designed assessments enhance student learning and engagement, offering opportunities for both formative and summative assessments. And using varied questioning types helps accommodate different learning styles. So you want to incorporate those into your assessments, making them more interactive and engaging. And accessibility and equity should also be a priority in your assessments, offering multiple means of assessments while ensuring that assessments are formatted in a way that all students can succeed. And you also want to uphold academic integrity. So tools like Turnitin for plagiarism detection, and we'll talk about that later on in this webinar, and question randomization, secure quiz settings, those all help to create a fair testing environment for both you and your students. And then finally, your assessment should include multiple feedback opportunities. So Canvas has, their gradebook is called the Speed Grader. And then you can also incorporate rubrics into your assessments for timely and constructive feedback, which helps your students to learn and improve. And so by keeping these in mind, these principles, you can create assessments that not only measure learning, but also they support your student success. And so next we're going to talk about the specific assessment features within Canvas. We'll begin by talking about the assignment feature. And so Canvas assignments have flexible and powerful tools for collecting and grading student work. And they support various submission types. And those submission types include text entry, file uploads, media recording, and external tools like Google Drive and Turnitin, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. And then they also to create effective assignments, it's important to have clear instructions and use rubrics to define the grading criteria so students know how they're going to be evaluated in the assessments. Rubrics not only set expectations, but they make grading more consistent and transparent for students and also make it easier for you. And grading and feedback. So Canvas does integrate with Turnitin, which helps to check for originality. And as I mentioned before, their gradebook is called the Speed Grader, which is a tool that streamlines the grading process and allows for detailed and timely feedback. So by leveraging these features, you can create structured, engaging, and fair assessments that support student success using the assignment activity. And then there's also the discussions. And so like Moodle forums, the discussions can provide a great way for students to engage and, in critical thinking and deeper learning. They work well for things like reflections and collaborative learning, and they making them a versatile option for various subjects and teaching styles. So let's take a look at some of these features for using discussions as formative assessments in your course. So threaded replies, and that's what the Canvas discussions utilize. They help keep the discussions organized and structured, and this encourages students to engage in a meaningful dialogue with one another rather than posting in a single reply. This leads to deeper learning and more engaging interactions. So the interface with discussions is a little bit different than what may have been the traditional discussion model in Moodle, but I feel that this allows for, as we said, a more organized and structured approach. And then the discussions also have a peer review assignment feature, and this is really nice for the discussion tool. which allows students to give feedback to one another. So you could set that up in the settings to allow for a peer review. And this not only promotes critical thinking and collaboration, it also helps students to develop the ability themselves to assess and review their own work and the work of others. And also, finally, group discussions. So the discussion tool allows for small group interaction, and this makes that it sets clear expectations and participation guidelines while maintaining an active instructor presence to guide the discussion and model effective engagement. So by using these features, you can create dynamic student-to-student interaction that goes beyond the traditional assignments. And then finally, we're going to talk about quizzes. And quizzing is a little bit different in Canvas than it is in Moodle. And there are two engines, and I'll explain the reasons behind this, but there are two engines that are utilized within Canvas. One is the classic quizzes, and another is called new. So it's like Coke. You have the classic Coke, and you had in the 80s, you had the new Coke. But if you're moving your courses from Moodle, ISU, all of your quizzes will automatically import into what is called the classic quizzes. This was the original quiz engine within Canvas. However, you do have the option to convert them to the new quizzes if needed, and I'll explain why. So the classic quizzes are the default option for Moodle imports, and they support most of the Moodle question types, making them familiar and a reliable choice for you. They also have a straightforward interface that you might already be familiar with and comfortable using. On the other hand, the new quiz, and that's what they're called. They're called, when you go in there to add them, they're called classic quiz and new quiz. So the new quiz offers additional questioning types, and that's what it's an expansion of that classical quiz engine. And so you can add things like hotspots and categorization and stimulus. Those are just a few. There's a variety of other ones. The interface is different. It's what they call more modern and provides updated quiz building experiences. But you might be asking yourself, why the two engines? And so Canvas maintains these two engines, the classic and the new, because the new quizzes were built as an entirely new tool using a different infrastructure rather than them just updating their classic quizzes. And this was done so that process did not interfere with the existing platforms that many schools like ISU are transitioning from, like Moodle, into Canvas. And so Canvas does have plans eventually sometime in the future of retiring that classic quiz engine as it gets integrated, and then it would just be one unit. But until then, until that new quizzes can fully support all the necessary functionality, there is the two. And as I mentioned before, you can convert, once you import your content, you can convert your classic quiz into a new quiz. However, you can't convert back. It's kind of like when you update like a Windows, you can't go back. And so which one should you choose once you import your content? If you're primarily working with imported Moodle quizzes and you want to maintain that compatibility and don't want to do anything beyond the import, then stick with the classic. But if you're looking to add some interaction or some variety to your quizzes, then the new quiz might be a better choice to go to. So ultimately, that decision comes down to the features and the question types that you want to utilize. And so yeah, pick that based on your need. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, who's going to talk about adding other apps and external tools into your course for assessments.
If you want to think about using tools beyond the ones that Canvas themselves has created, we have basically two categories. There's ones that are supported by ISU, the ones that we've already procured and integrated into Canvas for the entire campus. And then there's another extra set, the ones that you might want to request. So just to help break down the distinctions here, ones that have already gone through the vetting process, we have looked at them in terms of data privacy, accessibility for students, all of those sort of concerns. They're familiar both to all of us at the ITRC. We'll be able to help support them. It also means you'll be able to ask other colleagues, other folks on campus they'll be familiar with those tools. We know that they're reliable. That's part of the vetting process that they go through. They won't pass on any additional costs to your department or to the students because they're already the things that we have, like Panopto, which is a video hosting solution, like Atomic Assessment, which is a thing that you can add quizzes into other pages outside of what's technically one of Canvas's quizzes. Those things we already support across campus, so neither you nor your students will have to pay for them, and they're immediate. They're available right now, which sets me up to talk about the external tools that you might want to request. They very well might add what you need for your pedagogy and for your class, but often, despite what Canvas claims about their ease of integration, they often end up resulting in extra costs for students and extra upkeep. Then also, they require a set of reviews. So the process that they go through will take a minimum of 4 weeks after they've been requested. And not everything that a vendor will create will actually be up to ISU standards. So it won't actually, not all of them will pass the different review processes. The acceptance of every single tool is not guaranteed, even if you do put in one of those requests. So just extra context for the tools that I'm about to show you. So these are the ones that currently we not only support, but highly recommend that you start investigating how to use. Zoom is already, of course, something that you can connect to your course in Canvas. The way that you do this is you can go in and have it be so that if you record in one of the distance learning classes or one of the other places on campus where you have a regular Zoom meeting, you can make it so those recordings all will show up in your class easily instead of having to upload them one by one. If you have instructional videos that you plan to use beyond a single semester, so they're not just the recordings from a day's session in a classroom, but they're rather something you've put together beforehand that you think you'll use multiple times, that's a perfect candidate to put into Panopto. Panopto is similar to a platform like YouTube. It's a video hosting and streaming platform. What's great about it for instruction is that you can put embedded quizzes in the middle of it, and that helps students engage. So they can have a sort of check your knowledge quiz that will stop the video's progression, where they actually have to answer. And if they'd started to tune out, they have to sort of mentally reconnect and then answer a question before they go on. So that's something that, in addition to that student experience, you as the instructor can see analytic data about how many students have gone through the entire video, how many of them do well on those quizzes. It's got a lot of really nice features. So I highly recommend you start looking at Panopto if you haven't yet. Turnitin is something you're probably already familiar with. It helps ensure academic integrity for different types of assessments. Atomic is brand with a few different things. The one that you'll be seeing the most would be Atomic Assessments. It's one that you can add different quizzes to different pages, basically. We also have 2 proctoring solutions at the moment for online proctoring. One is called Proctor Free, and the other one we often refer to as Proctor U, but they are turning their branding into be Measure Learning. So sometimes you'll hear us say Measure Learning Proctor U, which is a mouthful, but that's both of their brands at once. So those are the ones that we recommend and that we think will suit many, many different courses. And I'm about to show you how you'd add one of these to your course. So in Moodle, you're probably familiar with this pane that pops up on the left where you want to add an activity or resource. Canvas has a more streamlined looking interface. So instead of having this sort of logo that reminds you of what type of resource it is, as well as the name of the extra activity, in Canvas, you'll have to find under an activity, you'll see the bit that says submission type, then look at the drop-down menu, and then find the actual tool below that. I'll show you all this in a video in a second. What this video is going to demonstrate is both how you add this, but it's also going to show you that for Turnitin, the one that I said was about academic integrity, they have a different way to add to an activity, which is different from all the rest and something that we cannot change. So it's a little bit of a gotcha. But here's the video where you'll be able to see how all of this works. So here in Canvas, you can see that we've got an assignment that I called Essay 1. There's 3 dots on the right. When you click on that, you can go to more options. Then you can scroll down to the section that says submission type and select external tool. Then under find, you can scroll, or if you knew the name of it, you could type it in. What I'm doing right now is demonstrating that Turnitin isn't in this list. And sadly, we can't add it to that list, even though we do have it on campus. So the way you'd get to Turnitin specifically is on the left course navigation. You click on assignments, then at the top, go to those 3 dots. That's the one place that Turnitin will be able to be found. And like I said, we can't change that. The first time you use it, you'll have to accept the end user license agreement. But then after that, you'll be able to add it just as you're probably familiar with from Moodle. And if you do want to go ahead and request an additional external tool or app, here's the process that we have for that. We have a list, the apps that are already accepted, and also ones that are currently in the review process. So instead of showing you the form like I normally would, I'm showing you the Tiger Track article. That's the sort of image you can see at the bottom here. If you're looking at that particular article, you'd be able to scroll down and see all the courses that are already being vetted in that review process. I'm showing you that so that you don't have to waste your time going through trying to fill out the form and trying to get the details if you see that somebody else has already done that work. So if you go to that Tiger Tracks, you'll be able to see what else is already being reviewed, and then also go ahead and fill out the form if you need to. But I do want to stress that you consider the costs that students might end up having passed on to them. For many of these external tools, that's a pattern that we've noticed, is the vendors want students to pay for them. And when it goes through that process, the vendor is going to have to supply the things in this left column, and the faculty member who requests it is going to need to supply the things on the right. So there are things called HECBAT and SOC2. Those are different reports or audits that a vendor should be able to supply for you. There's a VPAT, which is specifically a review for accessibility concerns. Then they also need to supply a link for support, for customer service information, contact for their vendor representation, and documentation about the LTI integration, and a link to their status page. And then for you, as the faculty member, you'll need to let ISU know about the number of faculty, students, and courses that are likely to use the tool, how this app is unique and different from the things already available, what the desired implementation date will be, the expected cost for students or for faculty, the department or person who's going to be responsible for those costs, and the department or person who will be responsible for the support and upkeep of the tool. So like I was saying before, it's a good thing to go ahead and look at that Tiger Track article to see what has already been requested, so you don't have to repeat this process. But if you do choose to submit something for a review, these are the things that that ISU is going to ask you to provide for those tools. So at this point, does anybody have any questions?
So I hope that you learned from this about the assessment transfer or the process of using assessments in Canvas. If you do come up with questions, maybe when you're transferring your courses, the ITRC is available to help you. Like I said at the beginning, we have a lot of resources available to kind of ease that transition. We mentioned one of the Tiger Tracks articles. We have some others that are also available that provide some more information. So you can look through the archive of previous webinars as well, which we keep housed on YouTube. And you can always just give us a call. We can schedule you a one-on-one appointment with any of our staff to talk about any questions you might have. Again, you can also drop into that Zoom meeting every Monday and Thursday at 2. And thank you for your time today. We're so excited about this transition and hope we can make it as seamless as possible for you.